Have you ever not slept for so long that you started hallucinating? What was your experience? Yes, I saw shadow creatures and I thought they were out to get me. I went roughly 4 days on 5 hours sleep total. I could function fine, but I would just constantly hear things like people mumbling right next to me. Yeah. After 70 hours or so. It's pretty disorienting and rational thinking starts to get very slow. The hallucinations are not realistic but are more like gaps in your vision that are shaped like things. Might see a silhouette at a distance or briefly around a corner. Very difficult to function in this state. Would not recommend. A buddy of mine landed a painting job working inside of a big commercial building, and he basically stayed in the place for 6 days straight smoking crystal meth and painting to meet his deadline and avoid hiring a crew to help him. On the 6th day the building caught fire and he ran into the lobby and was pulling people out into the streets and yelling to call 911. The firemen showed up and couldn't locate a fire because there was none. He was hallucinating. After a while I start to become seriously paranoid and I start hearing voices and things like that. It's not very fun. I have some serious issues with sleep, and sometimes it will get to the point where I will start seeing things out the corners of my eye that aren't actually happening, and I manage to scare the shit out of myself. Please get enough sleep. Don't fall into the habit of staying up for days on end. The longer you stay up, the harder it is to fall asleep. Ex-addict. Was driving home after a 3-day meth bender. Needed food, so drove into a McDonald's drive-thru. When asked for my order I replied, "McChicken meal. Please." Then they asked me again and I said, "McChicken meal. Please." Then they asked me again and I was like, "Can't you fucking hear me? McChicken meal." And that's when I realized I wasn't actually saying anything. I was just replying in my head. Spent a few weeks only getting about 4 hours of sleep a night. My brain started seeing, from the corners of my eyes, black things dropping from the ceiling that looked like giant spiders. I started making sure I got enough sleep. I hadn't slept for about 72 hours when I went to the Doc gave me Ambien. I go home, get in bed and take one. A few minutes later, the floor was covered in water and the walls were melting. It was raining outside and the water on my windows was marching in formation. I've never known whether that was sleep deprivation or the effects of Ambien. I've never taken another. Overseas on a deployment, started getting sleep deprived for a period of time. Started hallucinating the big date palm trees moving across the road like in The Lord of the Rings when the trees walk. Fucking shadow people. It's bad for you. You shouldn't do it. But if you're asking this question, you're the type to try. Remember, it's not real, and relax. Go to sleep. I was a passenger in a car, and looking out the window the shadows from trees would morph and grow and move. It was kinda scary, but I enjoyed it. It was like drugs before I did drugs. Don't do drugs. Do sleep. No sleep for 4 days straight. It really fucks with your head. All sounds heightened to the max, and was sure I could hear all my neighbors talking shit about me. I didn't have visual hallucinations but auditory. It was like musique and very nice but scary because you didn't know where it came from. After 30 hours I started seeing insects on the walls and on my desk. That weren't there. Might have just been the light. Or paranoia because I'm massively afraid of spiders. Made it to 50 hours without really seeing anything else though. Shadow demons coming to get me there very fast. I thought a girl was tipping over in her chair, so I rushed over and pushed her to safety. Sorry. Girl in public speaking class. Circa 1999. Once in my early 20s I took acid and didn't sleep at all for like 3 days. At one point on the 3rd day a door told me to go fuck myself, and I really wasn't sure if it was from the drugs building up over time or because I was so tired. I guess there's some confusion over the wording, but this was not one dose. This was multiple redoses over the course of 3 days with diminishing returns. Stayed up for 2.5 days. Saw a straight up guy walk through my apartment. Nobody was there. PLs, don't do this to yourself. If you do, believe me, you will start seeing crap. It's weird. And mentally burdensome and heavy. Marine boot camp keeps you awake for the first 3 days straight, and if you fell asleep you'd get fucked up real quick by the drill instructors. After 48 hours I started hallucinating lights, swirls in my vision, and had to mentally keep myself awake while doing absolutely nothing most of the time there. Dozing off for even a second was a death sentence, so had good motivation. When I finally got to sleep, I was woken up an hour into it by a rackmate because I had firewatch and I could have sworn it was my dad, like 100%. I hallucinated my father waking me up because I was so tired, lost, confused. In college there we had a major group project. We all stayed on campus for 48 hours and no sleep. Let's just say that by the end we were all hallucinating while writing our code. At one point I remember thinking my code was talking. But the music had just started playing. Guy the first knew didn't sleep for a week because apparently meth does that to a human. Anyway, he quit when he stopped to let a dragon cross the street. Oh, you mean the shadow people? Yeah, we're acquainted. Insomnia worsened by hypomania meant I would frequently sleep 2 hours or less a night. Not uncommon to be awake 72 hours straight. Generally it's the sensation that someone just walked past the edges of your peripheral vision. But when you turn to get a better look, there's nothing there. Have also seen black masses skitter across the floor. Yes, and it isn't fun. In my case I could no longer tell what was real and what wasn't. I was seeing scary shit. I felt nauseous and thanked the heavens once I finally fell asleep. Earlier this year I took my partner to the because he was hallucinating. He was exhausted and dehydrated. His hallucinations involved having snippets of conversations with people who weren't in the room. On the way to the he asked me, "Where did they go?" I said, "Who?" He said, "Your friends who were in the back seat. There was no one with us." Watch out for the shadow people. They start getting really obnoxious around 72 hours. And fucking brutal near 100. During my time in the military, there was a time where I worked 126 hours in a 7-day stretch. In full gear. Standing, walking most of each 18 or so hour day. By the 6th day, I was falling asleep while walking. And seeing people in my peripheral vision. I would look quickly. And they weren't there. Then I'd see one again. Etc. etc. We just called them shadow people. Anyways, it fucking sucked. When I start hearing music coming from my floor fan, it's time to get some sleep. Driving down the road, mailboxes and light posts turning into people and leaping in front of my car. I was lucky not to crash. Don't do it. The day after I brought my son home from the hospital, the striped curtains in my room were billowing in the breeze. Except there was no breeze. The stripes were just shimmying and swaying. I'd had 8, maybe 9 hours total in 4 days and was running on pure adrenaline and narcotics. See section. I don't recommend it.